unspeakable was happening across the galaxy, and no one could stop it. The Xerelian Empire once ruled more than 1,000 worlds, and they believed their power would last forever. They had the strongest ships, the smartest minds, and the largest army the galaxy had ever seen. Every species feared them, and many bowed without a fight. But now things had changed. A new enemy had arrived, and it did not speak. It did not pause, it did not negotiate. They were called the Drakari, and they came from the edge of the known universe. They moved like shadows and destroyed everything in their path. The Xerelians had sent fleet after fleet, but all were lost within minutes. Entire planets disappeared without a single distress call. The Drakari didn't conquer worlds. They erased them, and they left nothing behind except cold silence. In the high command chamber of Xerelia, prime silence filled the air. The Emperor sat on his throne, his eyes empty, while his generals argued around him. Holograms showed the burning remains of Sector 9 and the collapsing defense lines of Fortress Velian. One general shouted for more ships, another demanded they evacuate their core systems, but deep down they all knew the truth. They were losing, and fast. The Emperor raised his hand and everyone fell quiet. He looked at the room, then slowly spoke a word that had not been spoken in thousands of years. Protocol 13. A hush fell over the chamber, and even the AI assistants paused for a moment. Protocol 13 was the last option. It meant one thing. It meant they were willing to release the most dangerous species ever encountered by the Xerelian humans. Commander whispered, "Are you serious? They are locked for a reason. They are chaos made flesh. We buried them for the good of the galaxy." Another responded, "Yes, but now chaos is all we have left." Long ago, the Xerelians had fought a short, brutal war with the humans. It had lasted only a few years, but had cost them more lives than any other conflict. The humans were not the strongest or the smartest, but they were unpredictable, fearless, and they fought like they enjoyed it. They used strange tactics, laughed in the middle of battle, and sometimes destroyed their own ships just to win. They were impossible to control, impossible to predict, and the Xerelians had no choice but to trap them inside their own solar system with massive force fields and warning beacons. Now, those warnings were being ignored. In a cold, forgotten military base deep under the surface of Mars, red lights began to flash. Ancient systems powered on for the first time in centuries. Dust shook from the walls as old machines hummed back to life. A metal door slid open, revealing a large chamber filled with rows of cryopods. Inside each one slept a human warrior dressed in black armor, with a strange calm on their face. A voice echoed through the dark room. Command code accepted. Awakening sequence initiated. Protocol 13 active. One by one, the cryopods hissed open, releasing cold vapor into the air. The first man to wake up sat up slowly and looked around. His name was Dane Rakos, a name long erased from history. His eyes glowed faintly blue as he stepped out of the pod and placed his feet on the metal floor. He did not speak at first. He just stared at the wall where the symbol of the Xerelian Empire was displayed. Then he smiled, not with joy, but with something older, something colder. He walked to the console, placed his hand on the scanner, and the entire base came alive. Lights flickered, halls opened, and deep within the structure, weapon systems started humming to life. Behind him, more soldiers awoke, stretching, cracking their necks, checking their gear. They did not panic. They did not speak. They knew something had happened, and they were needed again. A aude aze voice came from the speaker above, soft and nervous. "This is Xerelian Command. I repeat, Xerelian Command. Do you copy?" Dane looked up, then pressed the COM switch. His voice was deep, steady, and without emotion. "Who woke us up?" There was silence on the other end, as if even the Xerelians were afraid to answer. Finally the voice replied, "We need your help. The galaxy is falling. We have no one else. You are our last resort." Dane turned toward the awakening soldiers and gave a short nod. They began moving with calm precision, unlocking weapons, loading gear, scanning maps as if it were just another day. He replied to the COM link, "If we are your last resort, then you already lost." Communication ended, and the first human warship began to rise from beneath the Martian ground. It was old, powerful, and covered in battle scars from a forgotten war. Its engines roared as it lifted into orbit, and then vanished into hyperspace, heading straight for the enemy across the galaxy. The Drakari were waiting, but they had never fought humans before. They had no data, no understanding of what was coming. For them, and now it was too late. The sleeping fire had woken up the ones you locked away. The ancient cryopods hissed and released thick, cold mist into the air as more humans woke from their long slumber. Deep beneath the dusty red soil of Mars, these were not ordinary humans, but warriors created in an age when the galaxy trembled before mankind. Their bodies were stronger, faster, their minds sharp, and trained for a war that never truly ended. For centuries they had been locked away, hidden from the eyes of the universe, sealed by the very powers who now begged for their help. The Zerelians, who once feared and hunted them, had no choice but to bring them back. Dane Rakos stood tall in the center of the chamber, his glowing eyes piercing the dim light around him. The soldiers stretched, flexed, and prepared like predators waking up after a long hibernation. Their armor gleamed even under the flickering lights, worn but ready for battle. Each carried weapons that hummed with power weapons, designed to crush enemies and survive the impossible. Dane moved to a large holographic table, and with a swipe the image of the galaxy appeared. It showed the bleeding wounds, the burning planets, and the dying fleets. His fingers traced the spread of the Drakari invasion from the edges, creeping closer and closer to the heart of the Zerelian Empire. The voice of the Zerelian commander crackled again through the speakers. It was nervous, filled with desperation. They begged for details of the human plan. They wanted to know if this madness could save them. Dane ignored the questions for now. He turned to his soldiers and said in a voice cold like ice, "We were sealed away because we were dangerous, because we fought without rules, because we made war an art and a game, because the galaxy feared us, and yet here we are, the last hope. You wanted us. Now you have us." The soldiers nodded quietly. They remembered the war long ago, when humans clashed with Zerelians and Drakari alike, when battles raged across stars, and every moment was a fight for survival. Some among the humans still carried memories from that brutal age, their minds sharp from war, and their hearts steady like stone. Dane raised his hand, and the base's main gates began to open slowly, revealing an ancient fleet, hidden underground ships, the size of mountains covered in scars, and ancient symbols began to rise. Their engines rumbled to life, sending vibrations through the ground. They were old but powerful, and loaded with weapons that could tear through enemy lines. Outside the base on the barren plains of Mars, the first human warship took off. Its engines burned bright as it soared into the sky and jumped into hyperspace, heading straight toward the Drakari scouting fleets. The Zerelians watched on, trembling, as the ship disappeared from their screens. Moments later, the first reports arrived. The human warship had wiped out an entire fleet in seconds, leaving nothing behind. Not a single Drakari ship survived. The Zerelian commanders could hardly believe their eyes. This was not just power. This was a message back in the base. Dane gathered his commanders around the holographic table. They were humans like him, but each had different skills, from infiltration to heavy assault to intelligence gathering. They discussed their first targets, the Drakari, motherships and supply lines that controlled the invaders' movements. The humans would strike hard and fast without warning. They would use guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and psychological warfare, something the Drakari had never seen before. One of the young commanders asked Dane why humans were so different from other species, why they fought with such madness and joy. Dane smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a warrior who had seen too much war and learned to love its chaos. He said, "Because war is not just a fight to survive. It is a dance of fire, a way to show strength and to remind the universe that humans do not fear death. They welcome it." The Zerelians continued to watch in amazement and fear as reports from the front lines poured in. Humans were attacking Drakari bases, with small teams disappearing before the enemy could react. They hacked Drakari communication systems and sent messages filled with fear viruses into their minds, making them panic and retreat. The Drukhari were confused and terrified. They could not predict these attacks. They could not understand the humans' wild strategies. Meanwhile, Dane received a secret transmission from the Zarelian High Council. They were worried about the humans' growing power and requested to activate something called the limiters. These limiters were devices implanted in the human soldiers to control their aggression and keep them from losing control. Dane looked at the message and then at his soldiers. He knew if they turned on the limiters, it would weaken them, but he also understood why the Zarelians feared what humans truly were. He made a decision. He would ask for the limiters to be removed entirely. He wanted his soldiers free to fight at their full strength, without chains, without fear, without mercy. The Zarelians were shocked when the request arrived. They debated fiercely whether to allow such madness, but time was running out. The Drukhari were advancing, and only the full power of humans could stop them. Dane stood before the communication console and said into the microphone, "This is Dane Rykos. We accept your offer, but we require full release of the limiters. We will fight with everything we have without restraint. The galaxy must be saved no matter the cost." The reply came reluctantly, but with the order given, the limiters began to deactivate. One by one, the devices stopped sending signals to the human brains. The soldiers felt an immediate change. Their senses sharpened, their reflexes doubled, and their aggression surged like a wildfire burning out of control. Human warriors smiled and laughed a sound that sent chills through the Zarelian observers. Their eyes glowed brighter, and their movements became faster and more precise. Dane looked at his soldiers and said, "Now the real war begins. We are no longer bound by fear or mercy. We are the Storm the Fire, the last hope of a dying galaxy. And we will burn everything until the Drukhari are nothing but ashin." The distance, the Drukhari fleets prepared for the next assault, unaware of the horror that was about to descend upon them. They did not know that the species they had once underestimated had been set free to become the ultimate weapon. The humans were unleashed and nothing would ever be the same again. The sleeping fire had not only woken, but was ready to burn the galaxy to its core and light the way for a new future where humans would no longer be prisoners, but masters of war and survival. Humanity doesn't do mercy. The humans were no ordinary warriors. They were born from centuries of conflict, hardened by battles, and sharpened by survival. Their return to the galaxy was not just a chance to fight again, but a reckoning for those who had once tried to cage them. The Zarelians watched in awe and growing fear as the humans unleashed a style of war that was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their tactics were wild, brutal, and unpredictable. They did not follow rules or strategy in the way other species did. They used chaos as a weapon, confusion as a shield, and fear as their greatest ally. On the surface of a recently captured Drukhari outpost, human soldiers moved like shadows, slipping silently through corridors and ventilation shafts. They did not hesitate or second-guess. Every move was precise and deadly. Each soldier carried weapons that seemed alive, pulsating with energy, ready to tear apart anything in their path. The Drukhari defenders were caught off guard. Their advanced technology and hive-mind coordination were useless against the humans who fought with reckless joy and terrifying skill. Dane Rykos led a small team deep into the heart of the enemy base. Their mission was simple: destroy the command center and upload a virus into the Drukhari network that would spread fear and confusion among their ranks. The humans moved with calculated madness, setting traps, ambushing patrols, and leaving no survivors. Their laughter echoed through the tunnels, unnerving the Drukhari, who had never heard anything like it before. Back in the Zarelian command ship, Lieutenant Vrex watched the live feeds of the operation with disbelief. He turned to his fellow officers and asked, "Why do they laugh in battle? What kind of madness drives them to such extremes?" One officer replied, "They fight because they love the chaos. They see war not as a curse, but as a gift, a way to prove themselves and enjoy the fight. They are different and dangerous." As the virus spread through the Drukhari systems, chaos erupted. Among their hive-mind leaders, confusion grew. Their once perfectly coordinated attacks became scattered and desperate. Their ships turned on each other, and their ground forces panicked, abandoning key positions. The humans used this chance to strike harder and faster, crushing the Drukhari resistance with brutal efficiency. Xerelians began to realize that the humans were not just soldiers, but weapons of war forged from fire and fury. They were relentless in their assault and seemed to feed on the fear they created. Their warships moved like ghosts, striking without warning, then disappearing before the enemy could respond. The Drukhari fleets found themselves trapped in a nightmare, where every move was anticipated and countered. Dane received an encrypted message from the Xerelian Council. They warned him that the humans' power was growing dangerous and requested that the limiters be reactivated to control their aggression. Dane ignored the warning and instead sent back a simple reply: "We do not need chains to win. This war will end only when the Drukhari are destroyed or we are gone." The humans were beginning to push deeper into enemy territory, and with every battle, their tactics became more daring and unorthodox. They set traps that used the enemy's own technology against them. They created illusions to confuse and scare. Their soldiers moved faster than the eye could follow, striking like lightning and disappearing into the darkness. Their laughter became a symbol of terror across the galaxy, a reminder that the humans were no longer prisoners, but hunters. In a secret meeting, the Xerelian Emperor expressed his fears to his closest advisors. He said, "We released a fire we cannot control. They are no longer our weapons, but something else. Something that might burn everything, including us." The council was divided. Some wanted to stop the humans, others believed they were the only hope left. Meanwhile, Dane gathered his commanders and shared a plan that would change the course of the war forever. They would target the Drukhari leadership centers, crippling their ability to coordinate and fight back. They would use fear as a weapon to break their enemy's spirit and turn the tide of battle. The humans were no longer fighting just to survive, but to dominate, to reclaim the galaxy that had once feared them. The first strike was brutal and swift. Human ships surrounded a massive Drukhari fortress and unleashed a barrage of energy that tore through their defenses. Then squads of soldiers landed and stormed the stronghold, destroying command nodes and releasing fear viruses. The Drukhari defenders fought desperately but were overwhelmed and broken. Their hive minds shattered, their worlds crumbling. News of the victory spread quickly, inspiring hope among the enslaved species and fear among the enemy. The humans had returned not just to fight, but to change everything. Galaxy watched as the sleeping fire burned brighter and fiercer, revealing a new era where humans would no longer be forgotten or caged, but celebrated as the ultimate warriors. But even as the humans claimed victory, questions remained. What price would the galaxy pay for unleashing such a force? Could anyone control the storm they had awakened, or would the fire consume everything in its path, leaving nothing but ash and silence behind? The answer was still unknown, but one thing was certain. Humanity had come back, and they did not do mercy. You wanted monsters. The Drukhari were not used to losing or retreating, but as the humans fought with a wild fury, the invaders began to pull back for the first time in centuries. Their hive minds struggled to understand the madness that was tearing their forces apart. The humans did not fight to simply win or survive, they fought to dominate. With laughter on their lips and fire in their eyes, the Xerelians watched from their command ships, unable to believe the destruction unfolding before them. The humans were like a storm. No strategy could hold back, no defense could stop their unpredictability. Shattered plans and their ferocity broke spirits inside. The human command base, Dane Rako, stood before his soldiers as the limiters were finally removed. The devices that once held back their rage and power were now deactivated, freeing the warriors to become something far more dangerous than any enemy had ever faced. The soldiers felt the change instantly. Their reflexes sharpened, their senses heightened, and their aggression surged like a wild fire burning through their veins. They no longer felt pain or fear, only a single purpose: to fight and destroy until the galaxy was safe, or they were gone. The first wave of unleashed humans moved like shadows across the battlefield. Their movements fast, precise, and deadly. They tore through Drukhari Lines with brutal efficiency, leaving nothing but destruction behind. Their laughter echoed like thunder as they fought without mercy. Their weapons glowed with new power, and their minds worked in perfect synchronization, guided by a ruthless will. To survive and conquer, the Drukhari were pushed back further than ever before entire worlds fell, and their fleets were shattered. Dane led a daring strike deep into the heart of Drukhari territory, targeting the Prime Core, the central hub that controlled their hive minds. The mission was perilous, and many soldiers did not expect to survive. But for the humans, death was no longer a fear, it was a doorway to glory. The team infiltrated the heavily guarded fortress, setting explosives and hacking systems. While fighting off waves of enemies, the battle was fierce and chaotic, but in the end, the Prime Core was destroyed, sending shockwaves through the Drukhari forces, disrupting their coordination and throwing their entire empire into chaos. Meanwhile, human AI warships evolved beyond their original programming, adapting and learning from every battle. They became smarter, faster, and deadlier, using tactics no one had seen before they hunted Drukhari. Fleets like predators stalking their prey. The Xerelians could only watch helplessly as their enemies were outmatched by weapons. They barely understood a rogue human AI sent a chilling message back to the Xerelian High Command: "You woke gods now. Pray they do not notice you." Across the galaxy, the balance of power was shifting. The Drukhari retreated in confusion and terror, while the humans pressed forward with relentless fury. The Xerelians began to realize they had unleashed something more powerful than they could control, something that could burn everything to ashes if left unchecked. Some whispered fears of monsters created not just to fight, but to consume and dominate. Dane addressed his soldiers. "You wanted monsters, and now you have them. We fight without chains, without mercy, without hesitation. Our enemies will learn to fear the fire they started, and with every victory, we reclaim the galaxy, not for ourselves, but for those who have suffered under tyranny." The humans were no longer prisoners. They were the storm, the fire, and the last hope of a broken universe. The Drukhari elder, who survived the destruction of the Prime Core, sent a desperate warning to the remaining forces. Humanity was no longer the species we knew. They were fire and fury, monsters born from chains broken and hate unleashed. Their laughter was the last sound many enemies heard before death came. The galaxy would never be the same again. In the midst of the chaos, Dane received a secret message from the Xerelian Council. They discussed resealing the humans once the war ended, fearing what they might become. The council was divided between those who saw humans as saviors and those who feared they were the greatest threat of all. Dane smiled and whispered to himself, "Let them try. We are not slaves to fear or chains. We are humans, and we do not stop until the fire burns everything away." As battles raged across stars, entire fleets surrendered to the humans, choosing life over pointless death. The humans accepted some, but never showed mercy to the Drukhari. They freed enslaved species, recruiting them to their cause and turning former enemies into allies. The galaxy began to whisper tales of the humans who fought with joy and rage, who laughed in the face of death, and who burned brighter than any star. But the war was far from over. The humans knew that the final battle would decide the fate of the galaxy, and no one could predict what price would be paid for the monsters that had been unleashed. The sleeping fire was awake, and it would not rest until the galaxy was reborn in its flame. Fear the ones who smile. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected. The humans, who had been locked away for centuries, were no longer controlled by chains or fear. They fought with a new power that made their enemies tremble. They smiled as they battled without armor, saying they felt more alive without it. Their movements were faster, their senses sharper, and their will unbreakable. The Drukhari forces were collapsing on every front. Their ships fled before the humans arrived, and many surrendered without firing a single shot. The galaxy was beginning to see that these were not just warriors, but legends reborn in fire. Back on the Xerelian capital, tension filled the air. The High Council debated late into the night. The humans had turned the tide of the war, but their power scared even their creators. Some argued that The humans must be sealed again before they became a threat. Others believed they were the only hope left to save the Empire. The Emperor watched silently, knowing that the choice would shape the future of the galaxy forever. Dane Rykos received a secret transmission from the Council, ordering him to rein in his soldiers and stop pushing deeper into enemy territory. The message was clear. The humans were too dangerous, and their strength must be controlled. Dane smiled darkly. He sent a reply that shocked even his closest commanders. "We are not done yet. We fight for freedom, not chains. We will not stop until the Drukhari are no more." The humans began liberating worlds once enslaved by the Drukhari. They destroyed slave camps, freed prisoners, and built alliances with other species who had suffered under tyranny. Their reputation grew as fierce protectors and brutal enemies. Their laughter became a symbol of hope for the oppressed and a warning for their enemies. The humans did not just fight battles, they won hearts and minds with their strength and determination. Meanwhile, the Drukhari elders sent urgent messages across their remaining forces, warning that the humans were no ordinary enemies. They called them monsters who fought without mercy, who smiled as they destroyed everything. The galaxy listened with growing fear as stories spread of human soldiers fighting without armor, moving faster than thought, and laughing in the heat of battle. The Drukhari knew that they faced an enemy unlike any before, and their desperation grew in a hidden chamber. Dane gathered his commanders for a new plan, a strike that would break the will of the Drukhari once and for all. They would target the remaining hive mind centers, destroying the core of their power and scattering their forces beyond recovery. The plan was dangerous, and many warned it could cost them dearly, but Dane knew that the humans had become unstoppable. They fought not just to survive, but to change the fate of the galaxy. The first wave of this new assault was brutal. The humans struck with precision, overwhelming Drukhari defenses and disabling their control networks. Entire fleets surrendered or fled, leaving behind shattered worlds and broken armies. Dane led from the front, fearless and relentless. His soldiers fought with a ferocity that left even their allies in awe. Their laughter echoed across battlefields, reminding everyone that humanity was back and stronger than ever. As the humans pushed forward, the Zarelian Council debated again whether to seal the humans away or to accept them as permanent defenders of the galaxy. The decision weighed heavily on them, for they knew that once the chains were broken, the fire could never be contained. Emperor finally spoke. "We created monsters, but they have become the guardians of hope. Let us hope they do not become the destroyers as well." Drukhari elders sent their final warning before their empire crumbled. Humans were no longer the species they had known. They were weapons of chaos, fire, and fury. Their laughter was the last sound many heard before falling to the blade. Their return marked the beginning of a new age where fear would belong to those who faced them, and mercy would be a forgotten word. The humans accepted no mercy for their enemies, but showed compassion to the oppressed. They rebuilt worlds, helped those in need, and forged alliances that had seemed impossible before. Their presence was a beacon of hope and a sign that the galaxy was changing forever. But even as victories piled up, Dane knew the war was far from over. The greatest challenge still lay ahead. The humans were no longer prisoners, but warriors who smiled in battle and fought without chains. They were the storm, the fire, and the last hope of a galaxy on the brink of destruction. And they would not stop until the stars themselves burned with their fury-broken chains. Burning skies, the galaxy burned under the fierce assault of the unleashed humans. Their warships tore through Drukhari fleets like wildfire across dry grass. Entire worlds that had once been darkened by the shadow of the invaders now blazed with the fires of freedom. The humans no longer fought to merely survive. They fought to reclaim, to rewrite history, and to make the galaxy remember that they were the ultimate force. No chains, no masters, no mercy. Dane Rykos led this new era with cold determination and fierce pride. He was no longer just a soldier, but a symbol of the unstoppable human spirit. The Drukhari forces were broken, scattered, and confused. Their hive minds could not adapt to the chaos the humans brought. They retreated from key systems abandoning their strongholds and leaving behind shattered fleets and ruined worlds. The humans pressed forward, refusing to give the enemy a moment to regroup or breathe. They reprogrammed captured Drakari AI, turning once deadly machines into allies of liberation. The galaxy watched in awe and fear as the humans reshaped the very tools of war. The Xerelian Council grew desperate. They sent envoys to negotiate with Dane, offering peace terms and promises of control, but Dane rejected every offer with a sharp voice. He said, "We did not come back to be controlled. We came back to be free, to fight to win. The chains that held us are broken, and we will never wear them again." The humans had tasted freedom, and with it came a fire that could not be extinguished across liberated worlds. Former slaves joined the human ranks, eager to fight alongside those who had freed them. The alliance grew stronger and more diverse, as species once crushed by the Drakari now stood united with humans. At the forefront of a revolution, the galaxy was changing, and the old order was falling faster than anyone had imagined. Dane's forces launched a massive invasion on the Xerelian homeworld itself. The empire that had once sealed humans away now faced the full fury of their last resort. The skies over Xerelia burned with the fire of human warships, and the ground trembled under the march of soldiers who fought with joy and fury. Their banners flew high, and their laughter rang out loud. As they advanced into the heart of the empire, the final battle was brutal and relentless. The humans showed no mercy to those who had once tried to cage them. No quarter was given, and no apology made. The empire that had feared humans for centuries now faced extinction at their hands. Dane stood at the forefront, his eyes blazing with determination and a promise that the galaxy would never forget. The war was not just about victory, it was about freedom, about breaking chains and forging a new future where no one could be enslaved again. As the Xerelian capital fell and the empire crumbled, Dane sent a message to the galaxy. No chains, no masters, no mercy. The humans had risen from the ashes of captivity to become the architects of a new age there. Laughter and fire would be remembered for generations as the sound of a species reclaiming its place among the stars. Even as the war ended, the humans did not seek to rule or dominate. Instead, they vanished from the eyes of the galaxy, leaving behind a legacy of strength, freedom, and a warning: never cage a fire. Once awakened, it will burn the darkness away and light the path for those brave enough to follow. The galaxy was forever changed, and the story of the humans was just beginning. Their chains were broken, and their skies burned with the promise of a new dawn. Never cage a fire. The galaxy lay in ruins, but also in hope. The Xerelian Empire was no more. The Drakari were extinct, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble in the silence left behind. Only the humans remained standing tall, not as conquerors, but as legends reborn. Their war was over, but the question now hung in the air. What did they want? What would come next? Dane Rykos walked through the shattered halls of the former Xerelian High Council chamber. His steps echoed in the empty space as memories of battles and broken empires surrounded him. He looked out at the stars through broken windows and spoke not to anyone, but to the universe itself. We gave peace the only way we knew. The galaxy had to burn to be born anew. Across the liberated worlds, the survivors and freed species watched as the humans faded into shadows. Like ghosts, they moved away from politics and power, refusing to claim empires or thrones. Instead, they became watchers, guardians of balance, ready to intervene only when darkness rose again. Their presence was felt but rarely seen, and their stories grew into legends whispered in fear and respect. The children of many worlds learned to say never cage a fire, for once awakened, it will burn through the lies and chains that bind. Dane sent one final message, broadcast across every system in the galaxy. His voice was calm but filled with the weight of centuries and the fire of 1,000 battles. Never call us again. We came when you were desperate. We fought when you were afraid. But next time, we will not help. The humans had set the rules for their return, and those who had called them forth now lived with the consequences. They were free, and they would stay free. No chains, no masters, no mercy. The alliance of freed species began rebuilding the galaxy. They formed councils of peace and cooperation, inspired by the strength and freedom the humans had fought for. The war had been a terrible price, but it had also been a new beginning. Worlds once broken started to heal, and the stars shone brighter with hope. Yet beneath the calm, the memory of the unleashed fire lingered like a warning, a reminder that freedom was precious and must never be taken for granted. Dane stood on a quiet hill on a distant planet, far from war and power. His eyes looked up at the night sky filled with countless stars. He smiled softly and whispered to himself, "We were never meant to be caged. We are fireborn, to burn through darkness, to light the way for those who dare to stand. We are human, and the galaxy will never forget." The story of the humans was no longer just a tale of war. It was a story of survival, of breaking chains, and of a fire that once awakened could never be put out. The galaxy had learned that some forces were not meant to be controlled, but respected. Some fires were meant to burn wild and free, lighting paths through the darkest nights. And as the stars shone above, the humans disappeared into the legends, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by their fire and spirit. The end was not an end, but a beginning where the fire of humanity would live on in the hearts of all who dared to dream, fight, and be free. And so the stars kept shining, and the galaxy waited for the day the sleeping fire would awaken again, ready to burn brighter than ever before.